What if the life you want does not begin with permission, investors, or a perfect plan? What if it begins with a quiet decision made at a kitchen table, late at night, when everyone else is asleep? A decision that says, I will build something small, honest, and mine. This is the question that sits at the heart of a simple but disruptive idea. It is the idea that freedom does not belong only to the lucky or the rich. It belongs to the brave who start before they feel ready. The $100 Startup is not a book about getting rich. It is a book about getting free. Chris Guillebeau does not speak like a distant expert locked in an ivory tower. He sounds like a traveler who has walked through crowded markets, tiny apartments, and back rooms of cafes, listening carefully to people who quietly changed their lives. Ordinary people. No special connections, no massive funding. Just a skill, an idea, and the courage to begin. The story opens in a world that feels familiar. A world where most people trade time for money. Where Monday mornings feel heavy. Where dreams are postponed with phrases like someday or when things are more stable. Chris asks a dangerous question. What if stability is the risk? What if waiting is the real gamble? He begins to notice a pattern among people who escaped this cycle. They did not wait for millions. They started with what they had, often less than $100. Sometimes nothing at all. He travels across continents, collecting stories like artifacts. A man in Africa who turns a simple service into a sustainable income. A woman in the United States who sells handmade goods and builds a loyal audience. A teacher who packages knowledge into something people actually want to buy. These are not unicorn startups. They are human-sized businesses. Built around real needs, powered by trust. The tension builds as a myth begins to collapse. The myth that you need a revolutionary idea. The myth that you need to quit everything and take reckless risks. The myth that business is only for a certain type of person. Again and again, the evidence points elsewhere. Successful micro-entrepreneurs do not chase passion blindly. They find the intersection between what they enjoy, what they are good at, and what other people will pay for. This intersection is not mystical, it is practical, and it is reachable. Chris introduces a quiet but powerful idea. Value. Every successful small business begins by creating value for someone else. Not someday. Right now. The question shifts from how do I make money to how do I help? When this shift happens, fear loosens its grip, because helping feels natural, it feels human. Money becomes a byproduct of service, not the sole purpose. As the journey unfolds, patterns become clearer. People who succeed with very little money share certain habits. They start small, they test quickly, they listen obsessively to customers, they do not polish endlessly in isolation. They launch early, learn fast, and adjust without ego. There is humility in this approach, and there is power. One story stands out. A man who loves travel and language creates a simple digital guide for tourists. He does not build an empire. He builds clarity. He solves a specific problem for a specific group. The guide sells. Slowly at first, then steadily. Enough to replace his job. Enough to give him control over his time. The business fits into his life instead of consuming it. This is where the emotional core of the book begins to surface. Freedom is not about escape, it is about alignment. Aligning your work with your values. Aligning your days with your energy. Aligning income with integrity. The people Chris studies do not chase endless growth. They chase enough money, enough meaning, enough space to breathe. There is tension here because the world tells a different story. The world glorifies scale, hustle, and burnout. Bigger is always better, faster is always smarter. But the $100 Startup offers a quieter rebellion. Small can be powerful. Simple can be sustainable. Control can be more valuable than expansion. Chris breaks down the idea of starting without permission. You do not need to be chosen. You do not need approval from gatekeepers. The internet has erased many of the old barriers. Distribution is no longer reserved for corporations. Connection is no longer expensive. A single person can reach thousands. If they speak clearly, if they serve honestly, fear still appears. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of not being good enough. The book does not deny this fear. It walks straight through it. Many of the people Chris interviews were afraid. They started anyway. They reframed failure as feedback. They treated mistakes as data. Each small experiment taught them what worked and what did not. Money appears as a character too. Not as a villain or a hero. but as a tool. The people who succeed understand their numbers. They know what they need to earn. They price their work based on value, not insecurity. They respect money because it represents trust exchanged between humans. One of the most practical insights emerges quietly. Your first customers matter more than your idea. They shape the business. They tell you what to improve. They become advocates if you treat them well. Many successful micro-businesses began by serving one person deeply, then 10, then 100. Growth followed service, not the other way around. As the narrative deepens, Chris challenges the romantic image of entrepreneurship. This is not about quitting your job dramatically. It is about building in parallel. Testing on evenings and weekends. Reducing risk through action, not waiting. The most successful people did not leap blindly. They crossed the river by stepping on stones they could see. There is a moment where the book shifts from inspiration to responsibility. If this path is possible, then excuses lose their power. If ordinary people can build meaningful income with modest resources, then the question becomes uncomfortable. What are you waiting for? This is not meant to shame. It is meant to wake you up. The climax of the journey arrives with a realization that feels both liberating and demanding. You already have something valuable, a skill, an experience, a perspective, something that can help someone else. The challenge is not to invent yourself from scratch. The challenge is to notice what is already there and offer it with courage. Chris shares frameworks but never lets them become rigid rules. He reminds the reader that there is no single path. Some businesses sell products. Some sell services. Some sell access. Some sell transformation. What matters is clarity. Who are you helping? What problem are you solving? Why should they trust you? Trust becomes a central theme. Trust is built through honesty, through showing up consistently, through delivering what you promise. Many of the most successful micro-entrepreneurs do not rely on clever marketing tricks. They rely on reputation, on word of mouth, on relationships. The emotional resolution of the book is subtle but powerful. The people who built these small businesses did not just change their income. They changed their identity. They stopped seeing themselves as stuck. They stopped waiting for rescue. They became active participants in their own lives. The shift is quiet, but it is profound. Freedom shows up in unexpected ways. In choosing when to work, in taking a walk in the afternoon, in saying no to projects that feel wrong, and saying yes to time with family. These moments do not appear on balance sheets, but they define success more honestly than numbers ever could. The $100 startup does not promise ease. It promises agency. You will still work hard. You will still doubt yourself. You will still face uncertainty. But the uncertainty becomes chosen, not imposed, and that changes everything. As the story closes, Chris does not stand on a pedestal. He steps aside. He hands the microphone to the listener. The message is clear. You do not need permission to begin. You do not need to wait until you are ready. Readiness is built through movement. The final reflection lingers like a quiet challenge. If you could design your work around your life instead of sacrificing your life to your work, what would that look like? If you could help people in a way that also sustains you, why would you not try? This is where the story becomes personal. The book is no longer about them. It is about you, your skills, your ideas, your unused potential. The invitation is simple but demanding. Start small. Start now. Serve one person well. If this story stirred something in you, do not let it fade into inspiration without action. Tonight, write down one skill you already have, one problem you know how to solve, one person you could help this week. Then take a step so small it feels almost insignificant. That is how freedom begins. Not with a grand leap, but with a quiet decision to start.